My own rent, I'm a renter right now. Celinda and I sold our home. We've lived here for 27 years, and we had that experience of getting that note from the property management company that said, if you want to renew your lease, it's going to be $300 more a month. That was an ice bucket on us. We were able to take that body blow. My concern is for that family that is moving, and you see them going down I-35 with their personal belongings in their truck, and you know they don't want to move. They don't want to have to move. We've been talking about the connection between equity and land use and transportation. It's about time for the city to stop analyzing and start doing. We own 6,000 tracts of land that we keep thinking about doing housing. I'm not leaving a position in the legislature to do another task force and more analysis. This is a crisis largely brought on by our own city. We should be doing public good with public land. We should be saying, in an era when we are more comfortable with repurposing property, let's create community with what was a bank or what was an old shopping center. We all want to revamp our land use codes, but we got to do big, bold, creative things, and I have those policies.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, there's 3,106 homeless people walking up down the street. And we see people, and all always see is these politicians, more promises and never do anything. You hear them say, give the government 9 months. And then they say, give the government 9 months. Then they get in office, they don't do anything. And you see people walking the street, no place to go. Why? It's just politicians making policies, talking policies, but never get nothing done. Nobody's in your corner. We see 61% gone by suicide because they have no place to go. We see 4,000 death by gun. We see these things happening here in Austin, Texas. We see young kids walking the street with no education. Why? Because politicians keep promising and never get nothing done. And you vote them in office, people like Kurt Watson. And you find yourself wondering why things are not going right, because you keep going with the same old, same old. It's time for a change. It's time to bring unity and strength. It's time to bring hope to Austin. It's time to bring somebody who will do something for you and just not for themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Kirk, you were mentioned by name if you want. Okay.
I'm happy to answer questions.
All right. Jennifer, go ahead.
So there are two ways that the city impacts housing affordability in Austin, and that is property taxes and restrictions on new development. I am the only mayoral candidate that has a plan to actually reduce the city portion of our property taxes, freeze and then reduce by 3.5% per year without cutting any services. That's a major impact on the cost of housing in Austin. That saves money for homeowners, renters, businesses, and it will also help enable more Austinites to actually become home buyers. And the other portion of the city's impact on housing affordability is, of course, our land development code. We must actually simplify our land development code, increase permitting. We need to speed up the timelines to 14 days for residential review, 45 for site plan and subdivision plan. There are all kinds of things in my housing LDC permitting paper that's posted on my website, jenniferforaustin.com. I have 4 policy papers posted there in detail so that you can learn everything that you want to know about my candidacy. Thank you.
We're going to stick with housing for one more question. My next question was about the land development code, but y'all mentioned that. Several of you mentioned that, so I'm going to go with a different housing question. There's so many housing questions. So Austin's about fairly evenly split. It's about 45-55 between homeowners and renters. Homeowners appear to have weighted influence on the city council through things like neighborhood associations, neighborhood contact teams. What changes would you make to increase access and influence for Austin's renters? And we'll start with Jennifer.
Well, it's obvious that renters are more likely to be transient. That might be one big reason why they're not more engaged in our political process. However, of course, we would welcome much more of them to be involved, rigorously involved in our political process. But the most important thing that we need to help all of the renters in Austin know is every single time they vote for a bond or a tax increase, it will directly affect their rent dollar for dollar up until the very point that the market will no longer tolerate it. So that's my word to everyone in here. Stop voting for bonds and tax increases. We have enough money. The revenue in Austin, Texas is insane. We have so much waste and it's obvious. Third-party audit, first thing on the docket when I'm mayor. Thanks.
Anthony?
Great. I think when we see Austin, we see what we call higher taxes in Austin, Texas. It makes it hard on everyone when we see people, when taxes are rising, people no place to stay. And when we see taxes rising, then we see people who can't pay their bills, people who moved out. So what can we do about Austin, Texas? I say this, that we come together. You know, nothing is solved overnight. What you have to do is come together in unity and talk about these policies that we face with. A lot of people sit here behind this table and they make a lot of suggestions real quick. Like, hey, man, your problems is solved, but that's not true. So what's going to take it is, it's going to take somebody to get in office, to sit down and have a meeting of the minds and say, okay, this is how we're going to handle these policies. This is how we're going to handle those who have rent situation problems. This is how we're going to make new homeowners in Austin, Texas. It's going to take working together. It's going to take unity, and it's going to take strength. Thank you.
Celia, go ahead.
Audrey, my vision is that we will do public good with public land, for example, and repurposing the open space that we have. And I'll go back to that to answer your question about renters, because this needs to be deeply affordable with childcare on site, with a pocket park nearby, built into the community so that people feel like they're connected to the community. We are a city that has forgotten how to dream. And I want us to look back. Every American city is going through this crisis right now. I want us to look back and say, wow, look, Austin built teacher housing. We built bus driver housing. This is an opportunity because of the pandemic, because of the changing of the way we're buying things, the way we're doing retail. This is a real opportunity to take land in the heart of the city. Pushing people farther and farther out is not equity. It's not Austin. It's not building community. Walkable, bikeable, safe, connected to transit. Whether you're a homeowner or a renter, as a renter, I say, everyone adds value. They could be the nurse, they could be the bus driver. So we are all connected together for different kinds of housing.
Phil?
With a close to 50-50 split of renters and homeowners, if we look at city council, that's much lower. I think there's only 2 renters on the entire city council. And when you have that split, you're just not going to get the representation you need. It's right, you say that HOAs do have power. These small neighborhoods do have a lot more influence on our city council, but that just doesn't stop with these HOAs. It comes to the people themselves. We need to find people who will represent their communities as renters. Downtown, there are so many renters at UT, and a lot of them can't afford to live here anymore, so they move to San Marcos, and then their voice is no longer heard because they can no longer vote. And then the people who are moving into Austin, they feel that they don't deserve a voice here because we've built such a stigma of don't come here, you're not an Austinite, and that just needs to stop, both from the city council as well as Austinites in general. Because when they move here, they deserve their voice because they're the ones who are paying $1,800, $2,200, or sharing bathrooms or bedrooms. That needs to stop.
Kirk?
Thank you. I have advocated for making sure that advocacy groups for renters have a clear voice at City Hall, and that it includes basically the creation of a mayor's advocacy group that is made up of renters and people that are advocates for renters, and that would include people at the universities that we have that represent so many young people that are also renting. The second thing that I would say is that we have to have a focus on our appointments, and the appointments that are getting made need to include renters so that you're always getting that voice across the board on different issues that affect land use and housing. And then the third thing I will say is that we need to make sure we have a clear mechanism for communication. So working, for example, through the apartment association so that you have a partnership with the apartment association, so we're setting up a means of communication so that when something is being done, there's a way to disseminate that, maybe even through utility bills, so that people know about it and then can communicate with us.
Thank you. Gary?
It's being represented, it's transparency, it's having the right to have your voice heard. If you're a renter, typically if you look at the demographic that's renting and coming through town, this is like this in every city, Denver, Providence, Boston, Austin. The younger generation's on the move. You can see it on Instagram. These kids are like, I don't have a job, I don't care where I live, I want to be someplace fun. So that, you have to understand that there's a mentality out there. And then there's that mentality like, you see it on a lot of vehicles. I'm a native. Well, I'm not a native, but I made a Texan. I think that counts for something. So I want my voice heard. So if you're a homeowner, I think you have to have both parties in the same room. You have to have representation by a homeowner, because let's be real, everyone starts out renting an apartment, then they aspire to own a home, but that's not the vision anymore. So when you're looking at Austin, Texas, and the amount of people coming here, and they're saying there's going to be 4 million people by 2040, we got to figure this out, because you shouldn't have one voice representing all people. It's not one size fits all.
Thank you. We'll probably come back to housing at some point, but we're gonna pivot to policing, and Liz has a question for y'all.
I do. The Austin Police Department is currently negotiating its contract with the city. What facet of that agreement do you feel is the most important at the moment that we find ourselves in?
Gary, we'll start with you.
Could you repeat that, the last portion?
What facet of the agreement that the APD is negotiating do you find is the most important?
I think starting more classes. You got to have more classes. It's a big number, but as we've seen when we went through all of that, I don't like saying defunding, but we did defund and we did cancel academies, and then it cost us double to reinstitute. I think the training aspect of that has to be reiterated more and more again, because our city's changing. I think that the police get a real black eye every time they go out in the community. And, as you know, our charity, Peace, Love, and Happiness, is very pro first responders. And I sat with the police a lot over the last 20 years, and a lot of them left the force because they don't feel like their boss likes them. No one in this room would go to work and risk their life every day if they didn't love the city. Simple as that.
Thank you.
Kirk?
As it applies to the contract, I think transparency in the accountability system and a strong system of accountability. I think that Austin is able to make sure that our Austin values are reflected in policing in this community if we do the right job with regard to recruitment, training, supervision, and then an accountable transparency system. And so my goal would be, and I think this is probably going to fall to the next mayor and council, my goal would be to make sure that the public feels like there's sufficient accountability so that you can utilize that to build more trust.
Phil?
The biggest thing for me would be the recruitment aspect of it. I've talked to so many officers that I've lost count in the past year, and they say the same two things. The first thing they say is that we need a new city council, but they also say they want more officers on the street. Most cities try to shoot for two officers per 1,000 people, and right now Austin is less than 1 per 1,000 people, which means that officers aren't able to get task forces, aren't able to get better training because they're supposed to fit every single situation that they can. And rather than building a connection with these communities, with these neighborhoods, instead they're only seen as the people serving warrants and putting people in handcuffs. It's really hard to de-escalate a situation when you're looked at as the enemy consistently. So when we're able to get more officers on the street, to allow these officers to have time to rest, not to work overtime, and be able to do community service and build a relationship with this community, you're able to achieve something safer, more friendly, and better for the city of Austin.
Celia, go ahead.
Growing up in El Paso, Texas, my dad was a violent drunk, and there was several times when I had to call the cops because he was hurting my mom. My niece was killed by her ex-boyfriend, and Officer Pedraza here at the APD made sure that situation was taken care of. I share that to say that it's important that no matter who you are, no matter what your station in life, no matter what your zip code, you want people to be there to help you in those critical situations. The most important factor for me is to rebuild the trust. And I served on the police monitor board. I was an appointee by then Mayor Gus Garcia. And we need to make sure that we have a strong police accountability system. I remember from my days then, cops want good cops. And we need to make sure that we are building into that trust not the warrior mentality, but a guardian mentality. And we can get there, but I do believe it goes back to a strong and accountable police oversight to build that community trust.
Thank you. Anthony?
Yes, we have a great police department, and I love those guys. I love our police department. Man, we need them. In fact, we could even double up on our police department. Man, we need to support our police department here in Austin, Texas. And we need them. There's no Austin without the police department. There's no Austin. There's no protection. Our police department is our strength and protection. When you talk about integrity, when you talk about there's over 198,000 domestic calls in Texas. And when you talk about crime taking place, and you talk about crime taking place where 479 women rape, molestation. When you talk about those things in Austin, Texas, and when you talk about robberies in Austin, Texas, 1,100 robberies take place in the state of Texas. Sure, man, our police department is overworked, and we need to support them. Thank you very much.
Jennifer?
I could have sworn I heard you ask about the contract coming up. Is that what you asked about?
Yes.
I don't think I heard one person here address that, but I will tell you this. If we don't get them to agree to a contract by March 30th, we are at risk of losing over 300 officers. We're already 280 short, and because of the incentives versus whether or not they are in or out of contract, these officers that are close to retiring may go ahead and take retirement now for fear that they will be not under contract and back under the civil service law. So just want everyone to know that it's very important that we support the Austin Police Department in getting this contract signed by March 30th. But other than that, of course, we need to focus on recruitment, retention. We need to get a fully staffed police department so that our officers actually have time to perform community policing, which has been proven to reduce crime and build rapport with the citizens of Austin. Is it really only 10 more seconds already?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a lot to say about the Austin Police Department, but I will say I am the most pro-public safety candidate on the ballot for this November 8th, and I would love to have your vote. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to move on to Austin Energy because there's just a lot of ground to cover, I guess. It's only 3 lines I can find. Austin Energy is currently going through the process of reviewing and changing its rates for residential customers. What do you think of the current proposal? Jennifer?
That is the most tone-deaf thing I have ever heard in my life, that Austin Energy is considering raising rates at a time like this when obviously we have record inflation. The cost of living is top of mind for every single Austinite, yet every single agency, enterprise fund, et cetera, keeps coming back for theirs. And under my leadership, we are gonna put those things to a halt quickly.
Yes, Austin Energy is Austin, and you know everything is rising in Austin. Cost, inflation. Hey, thanks to Joe Biden. But anyway, like I say, we will support Austin. That's all I can say is, hey, Austin Energy is for Austin, and our people in Austin. That if I can say as Austin, it'd be good to come together, because it's like I can remember days where it's like I met the police department the other day. He stopped on the side of the road and he talked to me and he said, "I'm very concerned about our police department and things going and things happening in Austin, Texas." And he shared with me. I said, "Brother, I am for you. I am in your corner. I am for the police department. Let's be for Austin, because if we work together and we're for one another, great things happen in Austin, Texas." Thank you.
I am very concerned about the Austin Energy rate increase proposal, the rate case that was proposed. Number one, because I saw it coming to a crescendo in the midst of a legislative session. And it's a really important part of our budget. It's an important part of our city and how we fund so many things that are near and dear to us and to our identity as a city. So I'm concerned about the timing of it in particular, that it becomes an object that can then be taken away from us by a legislature that becomes accustomed to that, unfortunately. And I am concerned about the shifting story from Austin Energy. It seems like more burden is being placed on residential users who are trying to do the right thing by conserving energy.
Phil, go ahead.
Very much in agreement with the other candidates in that situation, but we also need to look at where the blame should be placed. And really this needs to be placed on City Council, who they treat our budget more like monopoly money than taxpayer dollars. When you have situations like this, the City of Austin Energy made this proposal because it's the last resort that they can do. Because City Council decided to give themselves a 40% wage increase on a yearly basis, or per year, rather than putting that money towards something like energy and reducing those rates. And I understand that $350,000 a year doesn't seem that much when you're talking about in the idea of billions of dollars. But it comes down to principle. If they're going to waste $350,000 here, where else are they wasting money? What other millions that could we save that could be pushed to City of Austin Energy to help, homeowners, renters, be able to take care of their bills and not have to worry about conserving, even though we should, but it shouldn't be the first thing to think about when you're trying to help your families get through everything they need to.
Kirk.
Austin Energy is an enormously valuable asset to the city of Austin, and it ought to play a role in this affordability. It ought to play a positive role, let me say it that way, in this affordability emergency. We need to be acting with urgency when it comes to cost of living, and there's so many things that we can't control, like inflation and mortgage rates and supply chain. So we ought to be focusing on the things that we can control, and Austin Energy and rates is one of those. So I'm bothered, and right now wouldn't agree with the rate increase. The second thing that bugs me about it is that in a time where we ought to be focusing very intensively on climate, this rate increase and what they're asking for it appears to me to take us away from rewarding conservation in the way that we would want to do, and is upside down in what is the Austin value and what I think we need to do to address climate.
Thank you. Gary?
I just can't believe we're going to ask for an increase. I think the Austinites have shouldered enough of the responsibility of mismanagement and lack of transparency. I think every time there's a misplay or a screw up, we get the bill. That's not cool to me anymore. I think when you look at what Kirk just said is we're moving away from the green where we're supposed to be. And you listen to what Phil said; he's spot on. It's like who's at fault here, and why are they getting a raise? And then when you talk with Celia, she's got beautiful ideas, but right now we're not doing anything about it. We can't control certain things like was set up here. We can't control this. And where are you going to get your power? Is it an efficient power source? How are we looking at that? Everyone keeps complaining, and they blame people for the storm of the century. You had too much snow, and now we're going to worry about what's going to happen when we get a rate increase. Is that because of the snowstorm? You can't get a straight answer. I'm just confused on this. Is anyone else confused why we're getting a rate on this? It's just silly. But anyway, that's enough about me. You guys, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, so a couple folks brought up the city budget, so I'm going to ask a city budget question. And I wrote this question. I don't like how I wrote it, so I'm going to try to edit it in real time. So let's just give me some grace, shall we? All right, so the state of Texas limits the amount of new property tax revenue governments can collect each year. That cap is currently at 3.5%. This year, I believe the city went right up to that percentage raise. Beyond that, they'd have to issue an election. If you were elected mayor, do you imagine hitting that percentage during budget cycle, or even asking the voters to go beyond that tax revenue cap? And we'll start with Gary.
I'm glad I started. Hell no, I'm not going to ask my good friends for more money. Anyone have a brother or a cousin that always ask you for money? That's what this is like. We don't hit a number, we're going to raise your taxes. Then it falls into every challenge we just spoke about. We can't have affordable housing. We can't finish a project. We can't have good energy. This is insane to me, and I keep using that word, but everyone else in the audience is going, yeah, we're asking you for more money because we can't do our job. That's what it sounds like to me, so no, I don't think that's right.
Kirk?
I answered the previous question by starting with the statement that there are things we can't control in this cost of living and affordability emergency, so we ought to focus on the things that we can control. And what we charge in taxes is one of the things we can control. What I've called for is that instead of starting the budget at a rate, a tax rate that brings in more money than was brought in the previous year, we start at what is known as the no new revenue rate. We start with that so that what doesn't happen is you start up here and people are then forced to cut and you end up in a competition about what's going to get cut. Instead, you start here so that at a no new revenue rate, you take advantage of whatever new construction you've had that brings in revenue. You take advantage of whatever new sales tax comes in because of the economy and what's going on in the economy. But then you have to justify and bring forward proposals about why you would go up. And at a time of a cost of living and affordability emergency, the city of Austin and the city council have to pay attention to that and not contribute to it. And so you start with that as a basis. I'm sorry if I went over. I apologize.
You're good. Phil?
I've talked to so many experts that have worked with the city of Austin either in the past or currently. There are 40-ish different departments or offices under the city of Austin, and every single expert says they're terrible. Every single one. They say they cost way too much for such a crap job, and they need to be reevaluated. We've come to the point where the city of Austin needs to stop asking for more dollars and learn how to save dollars by looking at their own standing programs, finding out how to do a better job of doing these things. Earlier, I talked about the development code being from the 1980s, being almost 40 years old. What other programs do we have out there that are well outdated, that could be very much further improved either by technology or new methods? And rather than asking for that consistent 3.5% increase every single year, how about we look to find ways where we can take dollars away from unnecessary flaws so that people in this city can either pay whatever they're already paying or even pay less?
Thank you. Celia, go ahead.
Well, I think we're operating on the premise that we're going to have a Governor Abbott and a Lieutenant Governor Patrick to deal with, and I hope that that's not the case. I hope that we will have a new governor and a new lieutenant governor so that we can work in more cooperation, because it's this, Austin is a wonderful little economic engine that is contributing into the state's coffers, and is not respected and acknowledged for that. On the value side, we can address high property taxes by increasing the supply of housing, and that means more rental, more ownership opportunities, more supportive housing, and I just firmly believe that this is an opportunity for the city to be bold, and to say we can do so much more, and that's my thoughts around the budget, is that let's operate from a position of building more housing to lower the taxes. Thank you so much.
Anthony?
Great. I think that's, Austin, you can build more housing. We can ask for the increase. What's been working for Austin? What's really working for Austin? Is it the increase? Is it the 3.5 increase? What's going to make the difference? Can Austin people afford it? Is it affordable? Can they afford to pay their taxes? Can they afford increase in rent and buying land and property and more houses? Can Austin afford it? And what is the best for Austin? I think when people come together, when you bring unity and strength together, when you bring people together, and you bring the city council where you sit down and you talk about those things, you talk to them, hey, what can make a difference? What can make the best for Austin, Texas? A lot of these guys here, they just talking policy. They got the experience, they've done it before, but they have failed. And they fail right in your face, and you wind up paying more taxes. You wind up moving out because you can't afford to pay your rent, or you lose your house. Which one do you want? So you vote somebody in who's going to take care of you. Thank you.
Jennifer?
So I'll repeat that I am the only candidate for mayor that actually has a tax paper posted on my website on how we can actually reduce the city portion of our property taxes. The 3.5% is just a little arbitrary number that's a law that they can go up to without getting in trouble for or having to ask permission. Doesn't mean we ever need to hit it. And the no new revenue tax rate is a nice idea. However, that's not good enough. We don't need to increase taxes at all. We need to reduce taxes. We can do that without cutting any services. That's like Austin is growing at over a 5% clip per year. We expect that to continue. We can reduce taxes by 3.5% per year without cutting any services. And then the next thing we're going to do is task the city lobbyist. First thing on her agenda this legislative session is to assist AISD in working toward a more equitable formula for recapture for our Robin Hood taxes, which is the biggest portion of our property taxes. Bring those taxes down, do a third-party audit, let's cut wasteful spending, and let's reduce the cost of living in Austin, Texas. We can do that.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, moving on to homelessness. Following the reinstatement of Austin's camping ban, the city has invested an unprecedented amount of money and time into solving homelessness. Do you agree with the current tack that this city has taken? Why or why not?
I'm sorry, was the question basically, do we like what's been going on to solve homelessness?
Yeah.
Absolutely not. I've never seen a bigger hickey than this that Austin, Texas has taken. We have money to solve this problem. We all know that we must prioritize spending on mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment because that is what the overwhelming majority of our homeless population needs. The other thing is, too, Austin obviously has become a magnet for the homeless from all over the country because we enable the lifestyle. We do not have a tough love approach, which is get help, get rehab, or get out. We cannot afford to fund every single person who decides that they don't want to get drug treatment or mental health treatment, but they want to live on the streets. And of course, they're just going to gravitate towards cities that enable that lifestyle. Sorry, I have so much to say about the homeless. I'm sorry. Anyway, there are many things that we can do. Obviously, we have the money, we have the resources. We just have to have the counsel and the will to actually solve the problem rather than continually fund this homeless industrial complex that the city of Austin has become famous for, and we cannot enable this lifestyle anymore.
Thank you. Anthony?
Great. I think, man, the homeless are people who are in need. The homeless are people who are hurting. It's probably some of my brothers and sisters who are hurting. Homeless need our help. They need somebody to give them some attention. And those people are, who knows, they relatives. I talked to a gentleman, I was out campaigning on the street, and he was sharing with me, hey, man, I talked to several different people, and they gave me several different ideas on how to help the homeless. A great one was this. I like to tell this, and I'm going to make it short. He said, gather the pastors in Austin, Texas, and get the churches involved, whether you're Christian, Muslim, and gather them, meet with them, and see can we come up with some great ideas to help the homeless. They need our help. Let's help the homeless. Let's find new ways. And thank you very much.
Celia, go ahead.
Earlier this year, I went to the Sunrise Navigation Center there at Ben White and Menchaca because I wanted to see what a really cool nonprofit was doing. And without a dime from the city or the county, they have housed over 750 individuals who were formerly without a home. They're doing some great work. I understand they're getting some of the grant money from the feds. I went to the warming shelter that the Urban League was doing after the freeze, and volunteered my services there. And it was sad to see that the folks who I was helping, you asked them, where do you want to go? The last place they wanted to go was the Salvation Army or the Arch. They much preferred going to an encampment that they had made at the corner of this particular intersection. It's a sad testament on a great American city. But we have some amazing nonprofit partners who are in a different place now than they were even 2 years ago. They are in that mode. They're the Urban League, they're the Family Elder Care, they are Caritas, they are Safe Place. They have formed a new coalition. They need a good partner with the city of Austin to fulfill their mission.
Thank you. Phil?
The city of Austin's approach to every single problem has always been to be the shining star, to be the leader. And that's what kills us. That's what hurt us with this homelessness issue. A couple years ago, they tried to do 3,000 beds in 3 years for 3,000 homelessness. Well, it's 3 years later, and I don't think we're even close to 3,000 beds, and now we have over 10,000 homelessness in this city. When we talk about nonprofits, Sally is right. There are thousands of nonprofits here in Travis County, and a lot of them work with homelessness. A lot of them have mental health programs ready to go, ready to be put on. And a lot of them have already serviced a lot of the homeless here in Austin, and they haven't done it with a single dollar from the city of Austin, which is amazing. But the thing is imagine if we gave them the dollar. Because if we consistently try to build programs ourselves, what they can accomplish with 50 cents will take us $1, will take us $3. We need to stop being the shining star and start handing it off to the experts, to the pros, the boots on the ground. Fortunately enough, Austin qualifies for the American Rescue Plan Fund, a free $11.4 million that doesn't come out of your pocket, but rather can be given straight to these nonprofits to help the issue and get the homeless people off our street so that we can have, instead of just tough love, love.
While I agree with the idea of permanent supportive housing and getting people into permanent supportive housing, what has happened is that we were given an all or nothing choice. Either live anywhere you want to live or camp anywhere you want to camp at any time, or we're going to, until we can get you into permanent supportive housing. And that system has not worked. What we need to do is, there's a big gap between those two things, and we need to create a continuum where we have services along the way. One is doing partnerships with those who are providing permanent supportive housing like Caritas and other nonprofits and helping them by being a good partner. But in addition, we're going to have to enforce the camping ban. The citizens have told us they want the camping ban enforced, and the legislature has told us you must enforce the camping ban. But in order to do that, you're going to have places where people can go, and we're not doing that right now. That needs to be done. I would envision San Antonio Haven for Hope style, a place maybe out at Community First Village to help with that program, and I'm out of time.
Thank you. Gary?
I'm glad I was last. We've been doing this for 20 years, our charity, Peace, Love, and Happiness. Every charity you just heard mentioned, we're the private sector that fund that. We're talking tens of millions of dollars that the Peace, Love, and Happiness Foundation and the Peace, Love, and Happiness Charity have donated to ensure that the homeless have a place to go. Everything Kirk just said is spot on. You have to enforce the camping ban. Everything that Phil said and Celie said, this is where we're at. But I'm the only one up here who's done something for 20 years. This is so easy to fix. When you go out to Mobile Loaves and Fishes, we started with 200 trailers. Now we're going to have almost 2,000 homes. You look at Houses for Healing, another project we started. We've built over 150 tiny homes. We just finished a project in Holbrook, New Mexico. I know how to handle this. We've been doing it for 20 years quietly without the help of the city. Imagine if I'm mayor, what will happen to this problem? And Kirk's been to our motorcycle ride, by the way, and he's seen the money we raise in one ride for the homeless situation and for the 100 Club. So, guys, we've been doing this quietly as private citizens, me and my group of gang nice guys like Kirk and everyone at this table. But now it's time we need Austin's help. Think about it. Think about all those charities they just mentioned. Am I out of time?
You are.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you all. So I said I wasn't going to ask a land development code question, and I lied. So I'm going to go back to that because, I don't know, I think it's important. So y'all have mentioned it a little bit now, but I want to get a little more specific. So as many of you know, Austin spent almost a decade trying to rewrite its land development code, which was last overhauled in 1984. So my question to you is, should the city try again to rewrite this land development code? And if so, in what way? And by that, it's very open-ended. By that I mean process, or is there a specific part of the code that the city should be focusing on? Let me know what you think. Gary, we'll start with you.
This is easy. Yes, they should rewrite it, and everything Kirk's going to say, Phil's going to say, Cilli's going to say, I agree with 100%.
All right, easy enough. Kirk.
Yeah, we're going to have to change the land development code. And what we need to do is we need to do it where we have an approach that is not what we've been dealing with, which is all or nothing, this is what you get, and we'll even go a long way to defend that, and we ended up pretty much with nothing. A couple of things about how the process might work. One is that instead of amending the land development code, if you want to amend the land development code, let's amend the land development code, but you don't have to simultaneously put in all of the changes that you say you want at that point. Get the land development code rewritten. Second thing, as you're doing that, and it's going to take a while to do it, whether you want it to or not, because trust has been breached on the process that we've had over the last few years. Since that's going to be the case, start moving on the things you can move on. Start moving on things like how you make it easier to not build a McMansion, but instead build a fourplex or a threeplex or ADUs, those sorts of things. What I said about the transit corridors, go there and start doing that as well.
Thank you. Phil?
The reason Code Next failed is for two reasons. One, there was a lack of transparency. Code Next just tried to tell homeowners to just screw off and do whatever we want. The second, we ignored state laws, we ignored local laws, we ignored federal laws, and every single time it was thrown back in Code Next's face. Every single time. And I'm gonna sound like, an echo of Kirk Watson. For when it comes to homeowners, put in triplexes, put in duplexes, put something that they can agree on and move what can be moved now. I don't want to see skyscrapers across the entire, every single spot of city line, because that's just ridiculous. We need to allow homeowners to enjoy their neighborhoods because they were here. They bought their homes for their reasons, for their families. But when it comes to the code itself, we need to learn how to build something that is both transparent with the people of this city so that everyone can at least be close to agreeing to every part of it, and being able to create something that doesn't jeopardize what this city looks like and how it functions.
This is exhausting, this land development code. People are hurting. People are hurting. And to the thought of going back to, of course, yes, the land development code needs to be fixed. Got it. But meanwhile, we've displaced thousands and thousands and thousands of our neighbors. It's not right. It's not just. It's not my Austin. We're one of the few American cities that's lost its percentage of Latinos and African Americans. It's not sustainable to our economy to continue to take inaction and study things and push people out to the eastern edge. I want the land development code redeveloped. It was passed 7-4 by City Council. And it is a sin that this city has not woken up to the crisis, the human pain that's happening behind the scenes. I'm running for mayor because there are teachers that are working at the heart of the city at Zilker Elementary, and they go out to Bastrop at night to be with their families, and they got to come in and take care of our kids. People are hurting, and we need to wake up, and I hope you'll go to CeliaForAustin.com and check out my detailed policies that other friends on this dais now seem to think are really great policies.
Thank you. Anthony?
Great. Yes, on that land development code, we see great changes happening in Austin, Texas. And what's amazing is, when you see what's going on in the land development code, you see neighborhoods changing, you see high-rise building. But a lot of these guys, who just sitting at this table right here, they say one thing, but when they get in the office, then you can't find them. That's what's really going on. They say about the land development code, then they go along right with it. They sign it and leave it just as it is. You know what? I'm for it. Things need to change. But it needs to change for you, because you are the hard-working citizens of Austin, Texas. You're the one who make a difference. You are the one who go on your job every day and make it happen in Austin, Texas. We don't need more government. We need more about the people of Austin, Texas. Thank you.
Jennifer?
So I am the only mayoral candidate that's actually been in the Austin real estate business for over 30 years. I'm an independent real estate broker, and I'm also a design, build, remodeling general contractor, which means I have over 20 years of in-depth knowledge of the land development code, zoning issues, and the very inefficient bureaucracy of our development services department. I have a paper on my website, Housing LDC Permitting, that gives a lot of detailed solutions on how we can amend the LDC piecemeal, starting immediately, to increase the supply and diversity of housing starting tomorrow. It's not rocket science. You just have to have a mayor and council who have the will to actually do it. I think definitely we need to increase the use of townhomes, duplexes, ADUs, and row homes, which I love, which we can do on really small lots. There's a lot of ideas about reducing the maximum size of, the minimum size of a lot from 5,750 all the way down to 3,000 square feet. Minimum width lots, minimum lot widths, et cetera. And I think I'm out of time, but please check out the website, jenniferforaustin.com.
Awesome. Thank you all. All right, this is going to be our last question. And again, no closing remarks. So yeah, let's give this your all, I guess. I'm going to stick with housing again. Forgive me, but it affects everyone. So this was actually a listener or maybe reader submitted question. I'm going to edit it a bit because some of it I just cannot fact check in real time. So this person writes, again, with my edits, historically, environmental regulations, it sounds like they might be referring to SOS, Save Our Springs Ordinance, have restricted growth in South and West Austin, placing a heavier burden for industry and pollution on the east side. Now we are hearing, I'm going to skip that part, and I'm going to just add, I think, not only the burden for industry and pollution, but also the burden of development to the east side, which has resulted in immense gentrification and displacement. How will you ensure that development is applied equally across the city rather than accelerating gentrification on the east side? So we will start with Jennifer.
I think that it comes down to a revised LDC that is applied equally citywide without interpretation dependent on which inspector you get, which reviewer you get, which reviewer gets your resubmission and wants to submit new comments after you've already cured your comments. It's just about imposing the law equally on everyone, regardless of where you're located. I don't think everything in the city boils down to systemic racism. I don't think a highway is racist. We need to focus on core municipal services and functions like our roads, our cracked and leaking water lines, our sidewalks, and our infrastructure, and stop talking about things that is not the responsibility of the city of Austin. We need to focus on core municipal services and functions and get our tax spending under control. And also, no more sanctioned campgrounds allowed in Austin, Texas, and we need to fully enforce the camping ban, no exceptions. Thank you.
Anthony.
Great, that's fantastic. When we talk about pollution, it comes in all kind of ways. When you have new businesses come to town, man, people with money and power come into Austin, Texas, and you see these new companies going up, and pollution is taking place. It comes in all different type of forms, not only through road construction and things like that, but it's something that's happening in Austin, Texas, because Austin is growing, Austin is hurting. So when we see pollution taking place, we see a lot of, not only do we see companies and buildings coming, but we see things that happen that's happening in Austin, Texas, that's really hurting Austin, Texas, and our citizens. So what do we do about that? Man, what do? We stand for the people. And we talk about what's going to make Austin safer, what's going to make Austin better, is that we stand for cleaner water, cleaner water, and clean development for the citizens of Austin, Texas. Thank you.
The policies that I promoted, when you go to my website, were not something that I just threw up on the wall and see if they'd stick. I talked to a lot of different people in this community. What we need to do is be proactive and visionary and looking ahead to how are we going to build equity, support Project Connect. It's not equitable to say every single person on city council gets to say what projects they're going to have in their district, whether that's a veto or a suggestion, whatever you call it. We need to, that just promotes the inequity that we're living with. We are the most inequitable city in the United States of America. It's not me saying it. That's national organizations who are saying it. Our policies exacerbate that inequity, whether it's the master plan from the 1920s, it's I-35, whether it's smart growth. We need to build equity do infill to support our transit, not just to support our transit, but to support those who are driving our economy. It's not sustainable to keep expecting those who live in Bastrop to come into town and flip our pancakes at Kirby Lane. This is a crisis, and it's a crisis of our own making.
Thank you. Phil?
When Jennifer Reardon says that we need to apply the law equally, and it's true, but the problem is that it's not how we're putting that law onto the people, it's the law itself. The law itself is no longer equal, and it never has been. That highway is racist. I don't care what people say, it just is. We need to start putting affordable housing, not only in the east side because it's cheap, but we need to put it near places where people work. West Austin, South Austin, North Austin, it does not matter. I met a vice principal earlier this year who said this is the first time her entire teaching staff does not live in Austin. And one of her teachers drives past 4 different districts on the way to work. How much longer until those people realize that they'll get equal paying jobs or better paying jobs? Not in Austin. So yes, the Latino community and the African American community are suffering from this, and affordability needs to be changed, but it's not just them. We will lose the public service for Austin. We will lose our teachers. We will lose our firefighters. We will lose our officers just because we're not willing to put in the extra mile for them and put more affordable housing everywhere instead of East Austin.
Kirk?
We have to be very intentional about creating a citywide baseline. We already have what is known as the blueprint for affordable housing, or that's close to the name of it. And what it does is it recognizes that in every district, you're going to need to increase density and by doing so, hopefully increase affordable housing, but it needs to be an intentional effort. And we need to create programs that incentivize that to occur, and either because it results in a benefit or it results in something that's not going to happen because you're not meeting that baseline. And we need to recognize that we don't want to go to a point where we can't do 2 things at once. When we talk about environment and how we approach the environment, we need to be very careful. We haven't talked about climate here tonight. I brought it up once. But one of the key things is that the purchase of land, if you look at our climate equity action plan, there's a big part of that that is related to purchase of land. So we need to pay attention in how we're going to do the affordability part and how we're going to address climate.
Good job. Well, it's always good to be last. If you just go to spellmanformayor.org, you'll see exactly what I'm about. We've done more for the planet than anyone in this room. Go see the kinds of things we do with solar-powered vehicles. Go see what we've invested in. Go see what we're doing outside of politics, because I'm not a politician. Right now, my campaign's donated close to $410,000 to the charities in Austin. I'm not taking a nickel. I'm giving it all back because that's what it's supposed to be. I'm a person for the people. So when you're talking about all this affordable housing, all this building, and what it does to our environment, you just have to wake up a minute. These are sound bites. I'm asking everyone in this room to do their homework. I stand for 2 things, accountability and critical thinking. And if you haven't done your homework, you don't know what you're voting for. There's a lingo at this table. Anytime you feel that someone's talking over your head, it's because they're really good at what they do. Just like I'm ignoring her doing this right now because I've sat here long enough. That being said, guys, I need your help for this to work. I need you all to get your friends to get out and vote. And if you're not happy with what's happening in the city of Austin, change it. It's up to you now.
All right. Woo, give it up for all the candidates. Those are all of our questions.